Hey everybody, we are live. Welcome to another edition of Boston Straight Shooters. I'm your host for this evening, Steve, aka Negative Ned. Frank is away on business, so once again, we'll do our best to hold down the fort, get you all caught up on the weekly goings on with the Bruins, the Patriots, the Red Sox, and the Celtics. Before we get things started, let me see if I can post a link for everybody so you guys can join the show. We have a ton to talk about this week, so we want to make sure we jump right into it. I'm going to start with a little bit of Bruins news. There's really not a lot going on with them, but they did have over this past week a captain's skate. So David Pastrnak, Charlie McAvoy, some other guys there, some of the leaders. I think they usually have, one of these skates typical before training camp starts, before everybody gets going. And, David Pastrnak in particular came early, which he never does. So that's good to see. That's showing his leadership. He really stepped up after Brad Marchand got traded. And, between him and Charlie McAvoy, not sure if they're actually going to have a captain or just two assistant captains. It's going to be those two guys, but just a little bit of news there with those guys coming in early, especially McAvoy too, coming back from injury. He's healthy and he's raring to go. And the only other news I have Bruins related is Hampus Lindholm, who only played 17 games last year with a fractured patella. His kneecap got shattered or whatever. He's back 100%. He's been practicing in Sweden, and he's been skating full speed and taking contact during the scrimmages. And he explained that working in a camp environment has accelerated his recovery and given him confidence to enter the Bruins preseason without restrictions. So he should be available when the season starts. That's a good sign. And hopefully, he'll return to some semblance of what he was a few years ago. I think he was struggling a little bit before he got hurt. So we'll have to wait and see how that goes. I want to say training camp is probably going to start sometime next week. We'll get more into Bruins, what's going on with them as we get closer. But for right now, nothing else is going on, so we're going to move on. We're going to talk about the Patriots. Actually, we're going to talk about the Red Sox first. This past week, Negative Ned, typical par for the course, kind of called it. They lost 2 out of 3 to Pittsburgh, and they took 2 out of 3 from Cleveland. I had a bad feeling they were going to lose 2 out of 3 to Pittsburgh just because of the matchups. And, I will say that the Friday game was a pleasant surprise. We had Peyton Tolley made his major league debut. The guy's like 6'5", 240 or something. He's a horse and a half. Came in through 5 1/3 innings, gave up 2 runs, had 8 strikeouts. He pitched really well, and electrified the ballpark. Which we haven't really seen around here for a little while. So it's encouraging that they actually have a young guy in the pipeline. Kind of like the old days when they used to have Roger Clemens and Bruce Hurst and, to an extent, John Lester and Clay Buchholz. And, they had some arms down there to bring up. This is, really encouraging. He's pitching tomorrow night against Arizona Diamondbacks on the West Coast. They are giving him extra rest in between starts. I don't think he's pitched any games on 4 days rest. So I think he's getting an extra day, 6 days of rest. He's probably on a pitch count around 80-ish. I think he threw 84 pitches in the game he pitched last week. But the guy's got a gun, 98, 99 miles an hour. His command, the strike zone, was really pretty good, considering, must have been nervous, first game in Fenway and so forth. But, got to give the Red Sox a half an ounce of credit for finding this guy, because they don't have a lot of these guys in the minors in the pipeline. As good as some of the other young guys have been, all the guys we've been talking about all year, Roman Anthony and Marcelo Meyer and, Rafaela and these other guys they've been bringing up. I mean, their need is pitching. And I still don't think that they did enough at the trade deadline to address what they really needed. We all know that already. And it's kind of coming to fruition the hard way. Next game out, Dustin May, crap the bed. I think he pitched 5 1/3 innings, gave up 7 runs, and they lost 10-3. He has not looked good. The outing before that, he pitched 4 1/3 innings, gave up 5 runs to the Yankees, and another loss. There's a guy that, and actually they sent him to the bullpen because of that, because they're not, the back end of the rotation after Crochet, Giolito, and Bayo, those last 2 spots have been really rough. Walker Buehler, they couldn't get him right, got nothing out of him. They ended up releasing him. They moved to the bullpen first. I think he pitched 1 or 2 games out of there, and then they released him. It's unfortunate it didn't work. But he wasn't getting any results. They need results. They need guys that can step in and pitch. Dustin May, same thing. They just moved him to the bullpen the other day. And so now they don't have, well, hopefully Tolley can give them something the last couple of weeks that they have left, 3 weeks or whatever it is, to push them into the playoffs, because those last, like I said, 4th and 5th starter spots have been doing nothing. And not having reliable guys like Buehler and May round out the back end is also forcing them to use openers. Like last night, they had, I want to say Brennan Bernardino. No, he was supposed to start. I think he did. He might have pitched an inning, and then they took him out, and then they brought in Jordan Hicks, who got lit up for 4 runs in a third of an inning. He's been a train wreck too since he got here. I remember at the deadline when they got him, me and Frank, thought it was a good pickup, but he's been a disaster. He's got, 18 innings pitched. His ERA is 8.20. Absolutely horrible. And after the game last night, they put him on the DL with a right shoulder injury. So don't know what that's all about. Hopefully he doesn't need surgery, because then that means he'll be out probably for the beginning of next year. And, also, there are other guys in the bullpen that have been struggling. So the back end, I think you got Whitlock and Chapman are pretty much guaranteed okay back there. They have the 8th and 9th inning covered. But it's the rest of the guys that, hit or miss. And I'm surprised. I saw this earlier that their team ERA is actually 3.73, which is 5th in the league in baseball. I'm shocked by that completely, because with the way some of these games have been going, the bullpen, coughing it up, and the starters not giving them quality starts. I'm shocked that it's this low. They have to get more. They have to get more out of these guys somehow. They have to get better, and you had Crochet the other night against Cleveland, give up 7 runs. Last night, give up 7 runs. Abnormal for him. and not last night, the night before, he gave up 7 runs, and the bats bailed him out. They scored 4 runs in the eighth inning, and they got the win 11-7. But maybe there's a little bit of fatigue setting in with him too, because this is the most innings he's pitched. I mean, he had his velocity. Excuse me. He had his velocity, but he didn't have the control. So, hopefully he's not wearing down, because he's the ace, and they gotta have an ace. He's got to be ready if they make the playoffs. He's got to be ready to be the guy and carry him. And if he can't carry him, no one's going to carry him. Giolito is good. He's hit or miss. He has like 1 or 2 good starts, then a bad one, then 1 or 2 good starts, then a bad one. And he has the bad ones against the good teams. So, they got to do something about that. And make sure that these guys are right. And, I heard an idea floated on sports radio about, giving all the guys an extra day of rest in between starts till the end of the year. But you got to win games. You don't have the luxury of giving these guys an extra day of rest, because you don't have guys on the back end of the rotation to make it so that their starts don't tax the bullpen. So let's say you did give the top 3 guys an extra day of rest, and then Giolito goes out there and he throws 3 2/3 innings, 6 runs. Then you got to bring the bullpen in. Then what happens after that? You're giving these guys an extra day of rest for nothing. I don't, and they cannot afford. They're in a situation where they cannot afford to lose ground and lose games, especially when they got to beat the teams they're supposed to beat. They have a road trip, 6-game road trip coming up, 3 games at Arizona and 3 games at the Athletics, which I think they're supposed to be moving to Las Vegas. The stadium's not built yet. I think they're playing like Sacramento in some minor league stadium or something like that. But, nonetheless, they got to go on a road trip, and they got to take 2 out of 3 from each of these teams. And Arizona's, they're a 500 team, so they're not going to be a pushover. And even the A's, they have a habit of giving the Bruins they have a habit of giving the Red Sox trouble on the West Coast. So nothing's guaranteed with these guys. They have to scratch and claw for every W. Last night's game, they made errors again, probably 2 or 3 errors. And, Jaron Duran made one in the outfield bad. You missed the ball, bounced off his glove. I mean, dude, come on. They gotta fix those mistakes. They had another catcher's interference call with, what's his name? That catcher for the Red Sox. I'm drawing a blank. Anyway, he got in the way of a guy going to first base, got called for interference. Now, that call was kind of weird because the ump originally called the runner out. The runner actually gave the catcher a shove, and, they called the runner out for doing that, and then they went back and reread the rule book, and I'm not going to read the rule because I don't have it in front of me, but whatever that rule is specific to the base runner having access to the base path and, not being obstructed. So the call got reversed. But it's just little things like that caused them to give up a run in that situation. So like the mistakes are coming through. They got hammered 8-1. They got hammered 8-1 last night. They can't afford. They just can't afford to get hammered like that. They can't afford mistakes. They can't afford to lose to the teams that they should beat. They have the Yankees after that for a 3-game series. And so, they only have 25 or 26 games left maybe. And you're already talking 3, 6, 9 games, a third of that is in the next week and a half. You got, and the Yankees, I don't think they're going to be pushovers this time like they were when you took 3 out of 4. That's the part that scares me. There's always a point with the Red Sox where they beat the Yankees and spank them, and then it comes around when it comes crunch time, and they don't get the job done. And I fear that they're going to be tied or within a game or two of each other for the top wild card spot, and the Yankees are going to like win 2 out of 3 or sweep them, and the Red Sox will fall further down, and it's going to be, they're going to be walking on eggshells trying to get in. So I'm definitely concerned with how they're going to fare and how this is going to play out. They're on the pace for 88 wins right now, which is what I predicted for them. So they need to win, a few more games above 500 in order for that not to be the case. In order to get to like 90 or 92 like Frank had, or even 90. 90 would be a good number for them. They have to maintain whatever distance it is that they got on the last few teams that are trying to make the wild card. And it's never easy. They never make it easy on themselves. Connor Wong is the catcher. Sorry, it just popped in my head. Driving me crazy. But they never make it easy on themselves, and it remains to be seen how they're going to fare, and hopefully they can pull it off. Look, I know earlier in the year I was probably rooting against them kind of to an extent because I did predict that they would get 88 wins and miss the playoffs, but everybody wants them to make the playoffs and have playoff baseball around here. The part that I don't like, if they do, is it justifies the front office, Breslow and John Henry in particular, for not spending as much money and getting the job done. Other teams do it though, so they're not alone, and they build with young guys. And so this whole vicious circle, we're going to keep talking about this endlessly because they're not spending the equivalent of what they should be spending in order to have a top-notch team, a championship caliber team. And this proved it again at this deadline when they couldn't pull the trigger on the trade for Joe Ryan. Getting Dustin May, not good enough. They really needed to get a better guy. I would feel a lot better right now if you had Crochet, Joe Ryan, Giolito, and Bayo, and you'd have a solid 4 guys, to finish out the season strong. Apparently, from what I heard, Peyton Tolley was one of the players mentioned in the deal for Joe Ryan. A lot of people after seeing him pitch were like, "Oh, I wouldn't trade him now." You got the future and the young guy, and I think I still would have done the deal because he's still an unknown. And you know what you have in Joe Ryan? He's basically Minnesota's ace, right? He's the guy, and you put him at the top of the rotation with Crochet, and your odds of making the postseason are way better than not having him. That's all stuff we talked about at the trade deadline, so I'm not going to really get into it anymore. But I would feel a lot better about their chances making it with better pitching. And I just see the same circle for them that they've had, and it always comes back to bite them in August and September when the bullpen is taxed and they're using freaking openers to pitch because they don't have any reliable 4th and 5th guys. So my fingers are crossed that Peyton Tolley will work out. And we'll see what happens. All right, I'm going to move on a little bit because the Red Sox did get some bad news. Roman Anthony got hurt taking a swing in the game the other night. He's got a oblique injury, and the timetable for his return is 4 to 6 weeks, which basically will end his regular season. I suppose there's a slight chance he could come back in the playoffs if they were to make it to like the ALCS or something like that. But to me, for all intents and purposes, he's done. Anybody that has those injuries, those are like 6 to 8 week injuries. They're never quick to return from. I don't know anybody that's come back quickly from any of those types of injuries, and it's really a shame. It really hurts the lineup. He's been doing a tremendous job in the leadoff spot. I think he was hitting 300 or damn near it. Well, Danny, listen, they're in a spot for playoffs, and I know where you're going with that. The old Jim Moore playoffs. Don't talk about playoffs. Uh, but listen, they with him in the lineup, their odds were a lot better. I mean, they were 19 games over 500 with him in the lineup, and not having him is definitely going to be a detriment, and it's unfortunate. Like I said, he was hitting 300, and on base percentage 400. Now the strikeouts are high. I hate that, but I still think that despite the strikeouts, he's got a good eye at the plate. I don't know how many multiple game hits he had over the last month or so. He got, I want to say he got Rookie of the Month for August. So you know, he's been a key cog for them, and it's a huge loss. And it's unfortunate because now they don't have a solidified leadoff guy to set the table. And now it's going to be a mishmash of, you know, Nick Sogard, Nate Eaton, uh, Romy Gonzalez, Rob Refsnyder, Flotsam Jetsam, Ocean State Job Lot, Danny. These guys, and now it's gonna hurt them. I mean, look, I understand that Romy Gonzalez and Refsnyder have been killing left-handed pitching. They're hitting well over 300. Okay, so that only helps against left-handed guys. I don't know how many left-handed stars they're going to face the rest of the way. So I can't guarantee that those guys are going to be in the lineup 90% of the time. And I will say this: Nathaniel Lowe has also been a pleasant surprise. I think he's hitting like 324 or something. A couple home runs. He's knocking in runs. I think he's got 7 or 8 RBIs in the 12 games or so that he's played. He's definitely an upgrade at first base. He picked a ball the other night playing over there that probably would have been an error with Abraham Toro over there, in my opinion. So, he's been good. I'm glad they picked him up. I don't know what his contract status is for next year. Maybe I'll get that for the next show. Maybe he'll be sticking around. That would be huge for them because that would allow them to trade Tristan Casas. I think he's a free agent at the end of the year, though, if I remember. So I don't know. But I would trade Casas for a freaking bag of balls, and I would try to find a way to keep Nathaniel Lowe, and sign him. A guy with some power. He could hit 30 homers in Fenway. I think he had 20-something homers last year. But yeah, they're up against it now with 20-something games left. And they just can't afford mistakes. I think they went through a stretch where they only made like 4 errors in 10 games, and now, they're rearing their ugly heads again. And they got to find a way to cut them out. They just have to. Or they're not going to make it. Between that and the bullpen, they got to find a way to rectify it. And hopefully they will. All right, let's move on. We're going to move on to the Patriots. We have Patriots news. Let's have this. Patriots released Julius Peppers last Friday on August 29th. There's been a lot of talk about him and Kyle Duggar moving down the depth chart with the Patriots, as evidenced, especially in the last preseason game. I think Peppers was out there a lot with the second and third stringers. Duggar was too. And there was a lot of speculation about whether he fit the scheme or not. They did try to trade Duggar. It didn't work. They couldn't get a match. And he's got a big salary cap hit. He's also not ruffling feathers, which, the speculation going around is that, he wasn't a fit for the scheme that Vrabel wants to run. But, there's some other rumblings that, maybe the Patriots were trying to handle him a certain way and he wasn't happy with that. And so they just decided to cut bait. And this is, Frank and I talked about this, about getting the bad apples out of the room. And so Vrabel's trying to make his mark and be like, okay, we're gonna cut bait with the guys we don't think fit the culture that we're trying to build here. And I really think that might be more of the issue. He probably wasn't happy, and maybe he said something somewhere along the line, whether it be to Vrabel or a coach or somebody, about not being happy with his role. And maybe that's why they just decided to cut him and give him an opportunity to go somewhere else. Um, you know, it sounds like he took it personal. He put out a tweet that said, going on 9 years in this league, I've had 7 head coaches and 6 DCs. LOL, there's no scheme you can place me where I won't find a way to be effective. Well, listen, that might be true, except you don't fit here. So, I mean, how does that work? You know what I mean? If you're running with the 2s and 3s, and you're not running with the top unit, and you've been in a league for 9 years, that tells me that you can't say that there's no scheme you could get placed in, that where you won't fit and be effective. And Danny says he's a piece of luggage. Well, baggage, luggage, dead weight, whatever you want to call it, Samsonite. Listen, I think that Vrabel's making it known that he's clearing out the dead wood. He's cleaning the dead weight out of here, and he wants to build the culture his way. We talked about this, about accountability and the guys feeling entitled. At the very beginning when they hired Vrabel, we talked about these guys feeling entitled. And I think that, you're seeing a lot of that entitlement go away. He's just not taking any crap. And I don't blame him. And, I think that if they were able to trade Duggar, then Peppers would still be here. Because as mentioned last week, when him and Duggar both made the 53-man roster, it's a talent issue. These guys are NFL-ready guys. And you can't have too many rookies back there, or first or second year guys back there in the secondary. They already have, Craig Woodson, who was the 4th round draft pick from California, has a starting job. He's done a good job. So kudos to him, and kudos to the Patriots for finding him. Remains to be seen, how he does over the course of the season. But, what they've needed and what they've lacked is draft picks, young draft picks making the roster. I mean, the last few drafts have been complete disasters. And so, I think that the young guys and the scheme, maybe in a combination of that, is cause for Duggar and Jabril Peppers both to be knocked down to the 2nd and 3rd string. And, we're hearing it more and more now. It's a young man's game. You got to have speed. And the Patriots, in a number of areas, particularly, I would say, secondary, linebacker, and running back, they haven't had speed. They haven't had linebackers that can chase people down and make stops early enough in plays, and not like 10 yards or 15 yards after the play. They need guys that can make those kind of stops sideline to sideline, or upfield, and get those and get those types of guys. And listen, some guys are one-dimensional. I think Kyle Duggar is very good in the box. That's his strength as a safety. It's not his strength as a cover guy, and so that hurts his ability to stay on the field. So, I don't know. I mean, could he still contribute? Yeah, he could still contribute. You could have an injury situation happen, and he may be forced to be in the starting lineup. Maybe he's a first or second down guy, and he's a run stopping kind of guy, and that's it. And then on 3rd down, you take him out. But sometimes later on in the game, it's difficult to do that when teams go to the hurry up offense, or They try to make it so that you can't make adjustments and take players in and out of the huddle every play. But I like what Mike Vrabel is doing. I think he's just not. He's not taking any crap, and he's letting these guys know. I think that by making these kind of cuts, you're putting people on notice. Hey, look, doesn't matter if you've been here 9 years or not. It doesn't matter if you're a seasoned veteran. It doesn't matter if you're a good guy in the locker room or not. We're trying to build a culture here, and if you don't fit, then you're not going to be here, and the entitlement will be gone. And so that's refreshing, actually, to see. The guy that's on my radar, because of what he did last year, him and his stupid comments, Giovanni Tavai, that guy's on my radar because that's a guy that to me feels like he was entitled. And he's still here. Now, they have a lack of depth at running back. Again, veteran guy. Maybe, and again, we're not in the practices and we're not in the huddle and we're not in the meetings and whatnot. So maybe they're seeing something in him that we're not seeing. But he's definitely on my radar as a guy that, as soon as he gets burned a bunch of times, there'll be another What's Not at Negative Ned, and he'll be featured in it, to say the least. So, we'll see. I do want to touch on another piece of injury news for the Patriots. Christian Gonzalez is still out injured with a hamstring injury. He's been out since he's been out for a while. He's been out since July 28th, the first padded practice. So he's been out for 5 weeks. It does not look like he's going to play this week. Even if he practiced Friday, I would still not put him out there at this point. And I probably would sit him the next week against Miami too, because down there with the heat and guys cramp up and stuff like that, that's, to me, there's no point rushing him back and then having him go down again for another 4, 5, 6 weeks. He's too valuable. I'd rather lose him for 2 weeks than another 6. That's kind of how I'm looking at it. I've heard the debates on sports radio about why, they can't afford to have him sit in Miami because, these first 2 wins are like must-win wins, blah, blah games. But to me, it's penny wise and pound foolish, It's a marathon, not a sprint, and he's got to cover the top guys. I want him damn near 100% if he's going to be covering the Tyreek Hills of the world in the NFL. He's going to be covering these guys every week. He's got to be 100%. And so I know that there's speculation about, Mike Vrabel may be frustrated with him and making some comments here and there, but I think overall they'll do the right thing. I think that they don't have a choice. He really is your best player on defense, and arguably best player on the team. And so, he's already had a little bit of an injury history with the shoulder injury. Whatever that injury was, he missed. So look, again, I've talked about it on here. The guys are damned if they do and damned if they don't, right? We hop on them making, millions of dollars and not playing when they're hurt. And then when they suck, we kill them. So, the sports radio guys do this. And I just say to them, you can't have it both ways, right? You got to pick one or the other. Either you want the guy out there, and if he's not 100% and he kind of sucks, you got to take it. Or you wait and, maybe you suffer in the short term, but in the long term, the guy's healthy for the rest of the year. And then, you can piss him on about him missing a couple games. But I mean, to me, I would rather see him sit out 2 games, as opposed to, the next 6, and there's no guarantee he'd get through, even Sunday's game. If he practiced, then got hurt, then what? You're not going to Miami either. I mean, so, the whole thing is just, it's a difficult call. I side with being cautious. That's my 2 cents on it. Um, you know, the secondary is already thin, in my opinion. You have Carlton Davis, who they signed to a big contract as the number 2 guy. Now becomes the de facto number 1. He's got an injury history. He typically misses 5-6 games a year. So hopefully him and Gonzalez won't be out at the same time. And that's another reason I don't want to rush Gonzalez back, is because if he's out, comes back, let's say next week, and then he's out, gets hurt, and he's out another 4 or 5 weeks. And then in between that time, Davis goes down and say week 4, and he's out for like 4 or 5 weeks. You got both guys out as your top guys. And again, it can still happen that way. Davis could get hurt Sunday, right? The injury is a part of the game. I get that. But the idea is to not have both those guys out at the same time. I don't want to see that. So, you have that, and you have Alex Austin, who actually is now de facto number 2 with Gonzalez being out. He's actually done a pretty good job. He made quite a few plays in the preseason. So I'm not as upset at that. And hopefully he'll be in the mix going forward as a key contributor. And then you have Marcus Jones, who is, undersized, does a good job. He's got speed, but he doesn't have height. That hurts him. And you have DJ James, another guy, little known guy to me. So to me, their cornerback secondary is not very strong overall. And when you're going up against the big boys, you gotta have top-notch guys, and you gotta have everybody healthy. So that's it for that. We're gonna move on from the injury issues, and now we're gonna talk about the game coming up this weekend. Patriots are playing home to the Raiders. Former Patriot coach and former Seahawk coach Pete Carroll is now coaching the Raiders. The Raiders also signed Geno Smith. So he is reunited with Pete Carroll, who had him in Seattle. And, excuse me, they have, they drafted the running back Gentry, with their top pick. I think it was sixth overall. And, they're expecting big things out of him. He's expected to not only carry the load, but be an electric player for their offense. And they still have Brock Bowers, who was one of the top tight ends, if not the top tight end in the league. And they still have old friend Jacoby Myers, who asked for a trade and was denied. So, that's what they got offensively. Defensively, they have Max Crosby. Dude is just a beast. Will Campbell's going to have his hands full. I don't know if they're going to put extra help on the side of him to help with that and help chip him. But that's going to be an interesting matchup to see. And, I just look at it the way we looked at last year. They had games that were winnable games, and they kind of gave them away. To me, this is a winnable game. If they do everything, I don't want to say perfect, but they can't do like last year where they had a bunch of false start penalties and a bunch of stupid plays and mistakes and turnovers. Like, they have to basically play mistake-free football. We know that. The offensive line has to protect Drake May. We know that. I'm not going to hop on the offensive line very much because we've covered it. We've been over it. We've beat it to death. That horse has been beaten to death a gazillion times. It's going to get beaten to death some more based on how they do this Sunday. So it's a known factor, the offensive line. Getting Stephon Diggs in the lineup, it looks like he's going to be ready to go this week. which is phenomenal considering, he tore his ACL last year. It's huge for them to have him out there. Again, you can have Jerry Rice if the line doesn't protect and doesn't have time to get these guys the ball. It doesn't matter who you have. But I personally think the line will be better than last year. I mean, it's already better, in my opinion, by having Will Campbell at left tackle and not Vidarian Lowe or Caden Wallace or Demontre Jacobs or some Ocean State flotsam and jetsam, junk guys over there. We're doing nothing. They just look like pylons. Or they look like turnstiles in a New York subway. Every time a guy, they were looking behind them, like before the guy, they couldn't even set their feet, turn around, and the guys were behind them already. I mean, that was just awful. And again, Will Campbell's going to make mistakes. He's a rookie. But I expect him to be minimum 50% better than what they were last year in that spot. And so I'm encouraged to see what these guys can do on offense. We've talked about the wide receivers. Kendrick Bourne asked for his release, so he's not here. They cut Javon Baker. So that room is pretty much solidified with what you have is what's here. And I'm fine with it. They should be able to move the ball. Trevion Henderson at running back is huge for them. Huge pickup. Again, as I mentioned earlier, just an electrifying guy. He's got speed. He's a guy that, can break one all the way to the house. They haven't had that in a long time. He can catch the ball out of the backfield. He can block. He can do everything. And, again, sports radio, I listen to them. And, there's again, debate about, using him as the main horse to carry the load, or Stevenson. And, is he a number one running back? Can he carry 20 times and blah, blah? I don't think he's ready for that just yet. I mean, later on in the year, if it's week 6 or 7 and Stevenson is struggling, I don't even know if I'd wait that long, but if he's struggling and Henderson's getting runs and he's averaging 5 yards a carry or whatever, 6 yards a carry, and he's getting, 10, 15-yard runs up the wazoo and carrying, then fine. Yeah, use him as the number one guy. But for right now, his role to me feels more like the James White, kind of role where he's the third down guy, catch the ball out of the backfield, make something happen. The outlet, they really haven't had one of those guys. I think Gibson did pretty decent last year in that role. The issue was they couldn't protect Drake May long enough to get him the ball. And so I'm happy with the running back situation. I mean, Stevenson, listen, when he's right, he's damn good. He breaks a crap ton of tackles. And I remember 2 years ago, he was like number one in the league for yards after getting hit at the line of scrimmage or whatever, or breaking tackles and stuff. So, he's a strong, powerful guy. I don't want to say he's Derrick Henry or the bus, but that type of runner, physical, hard-nosed, straight up the middle, those guys don't grow on trees. If he can control the turnovers and stop fumbling the ball, and he can give them what they had when they signed him to the $9 million extension, that will be a tremendously huge help to the offense for him to get back to what he was and be the $9 million number one guy. That benefits the Patriots. To me, that benefits the Patriots more than if it gets flipped and Henderson's the number one guy and Stevenson is in a reduced role. And, maybe later on, if that be the case, in the reduced role, he's the third down back, short yardage guy to plow through and get some yards, as long as he doesn't fumble. Right? So I'm rooting for him to succeed because it's better for them. It's better for them as a team if he does. Nobody should want him to fumble 7 times and lose his job. Let's put it that way. And then have, as Danny calls it, a piece of luggage sitting on the bench over there, collecting dust. I don't want to see that. But again, this is a winnable game for them. The Raiders are rebuilding too. So it's not like, they're coming off, I don't know how many games they won last year, 4 or 5 maybe, but they're rebuilding too with Pete Carroll. And so, to me, I think their defense could be had. I think if you can run on them and take some of the heat off Drake May and force them to force their defensive players to tucker out. And listen, we already know that this is the strategy with Vrabel when he had Derrick Henry. Run the ball 40 times and just pound him into the ground. They're going to have to do that early on at least until they can show that they can open it up. And not that they can't or shouldn't try, believe me, because too many times over the course of the last few years, they did not have a lot of 20-plus yard passing plays or 40-plus yard passing plays. I mean, I just go back to the one that they did against Kansas City when Butte and they did a 40-yard something touchdown. I mean, they need those kind of plays. They have to have those in their arsenal. They can't be just look. The dink and dunk stuff worked a lot when Tom Brady was here. That will work somewhat, but you still have to open up the field. Excuse me. You still have to open up. You still have to open up the field and stretch the field a little bit and keep the defense honest. Danny says we need a fullback. Actually, they do have a fullback. They actually have they have a tight end that they've been using as a fullback. Unfortunately, I don't remember who he is because the notes I had for that are in last week's notes, and I don't have them here. But they are looking at employing that in the backfield. I think that will also help them in the run game. That's huge as well. I also think that will help Stevenson because, listen, when you have the one back set and no fullback, he's got very little time and space to get up there and do it on his own. And you don't want to have to keep doing it that way. And I liked when they had the fullback when Josh McDaniels was here before. James Devlin, right? Danny, James Devlin was the last real fullback that they had. Real good guy, real good at what he did. They definitely need that. So listen, if they can keep the defense honest and give Drake May some time to make some plays and run the ball effectively, they got a chance to win this game. And I didn't realize how bad they have been at home. I mean, they've been like abysmal at home for the last 3 or 4 years. And they got to try to find a way to get off on the right foot at home and get some momentum. Devlin was the man. He was really good. But that's the way I see it. I mean, I just think that and look, we've seen it all preseason, training camp. They've looked better. The special teams has to be good in this game too. They can't suck like last year, give up big plays, in the kick return game. And, you now have Henderson back there returning kickoffs. Listen, he broke that one opening night, and that's fantastic. I wouldn't expect to see that every night, but listen, if he can break some and give them good field position regularly, at least once or twice a game, he doesn't have to return one to the house every single game. I mean, obviously nice if he did, but if he can get them, good field position, 40-yard line or more on most of the returns. And again, most of the guys return it to the 20 to 25. Anything he gives them after that, to me, 35, 40, 50, those are gravy. and a real boost. And again, something they haven't had for a while. So, you know, I'm looking forward to I think we're all getting excited, rightfully so. It's a new year. They can't be as bad. They just can't be as bad as they were last year or even the year before. They got to get beyond 4 wins. They gotta, right? And so you've heard me and Frank on here. Frank has them at like 12 wins. I have them around 8. And he's like, you look at the schedule. Look how easy the schedule is. Yeah, the schedule on paper is easy. But I have to see them. I have to see the product on the field, at least, in order for me to buy in and think that they have a shot at winning double-digit games. I think that right now, again, 8 or 9 wins is realistic. They're rebuilding, and they have to rebuild from the foundation up. Again, I'm going to keep using this analogy because you build with the foundation. When you build the house, you don't put the roof and the chimney on first. That's what everybody wants. They want the final results first. It doesn't work that way. So I'm going to hang with my 8 wins, my 8 and 9 win range. And I think I'm going to put it as a poll question. How many wins everybody thinks the Patriots are going to get? We'll have ranges on it. So it's not going to be, I'm not going to have to sift through 1 through whatever it is. I'll fix it so it's reasonable. But I'd be curious to get everybody's take on how many wins you think the Patriots are going to get this year, especially where me and Frank have been going back and forth the way we have. I'm almost 100%, almost 110% sure that he has not changed. And I think he was around 11 or 12 before, and it wouldn't shock me if he came on here next time around and says they're going to win 13 or 14. That would not be a surprise to me one bit, given how how amped up he is about them. I am going to try something here. I'm going to say, so we do a thing when Frank is on. Usually we do a thing after the games that says, hey, what's the 3 things that stood out to you, so to speak, right? A roundabout way. So, and I don't remember if we did this before or not. I have to go back and look, but I'm going to say what my 3 keys to the game are. They're kind of no-brainers, right? Everybody's going to be like, yeah, no kidding. But they have to have these, right? They have to minimize the mistakes and penalties, and they can't beat themselves. Too many times last year in the winnable games, they beat themselves. So they have to minimize those, especially on offense. We know the history with the penalties, 10-yard play, no penalty, 15-yard play, pass play, no penalty, blah, blah. They got to eliminate 99% of that stuff if they want to have a shot. Obviously, run the ball, control the clock. It's not new. It's not news. But given the way that they're structured, they should be able to run the ball and control the clock. And if you look at the NFL now, where a little bit teams are getting pass happy up the wazoo, I think more teams are establishing the run. Look what Philadelphia did with Saquon Barkley last year. More teams are trying to find it, and Buffalo with James Cook. More teams are utilizing the run, and so it's starting to make a comeback. So they need to control the clock, and they can't allow any big plays on defense. Again, preseason, you got to take with a grain of salt, but you can't give up 50-yard plays, and so I'm leery of that in this game coming up. So they just have to be mindful not to try to do that. Listen, they're going to make plays, but you can't give up 2 or 3 50-plus yard plays or any 70-yard plays for a touchdown and so forth. They can't have it. So those are my 3 keys to the game. And with that said, negative Ned being negative Ned, I have a bad feeling about this game for the Patriots. I want them to win badly, but I have a funny feeling the Raiders are going to pull it out. And the only reason I say that is because people forget last year when Geno Smith was on Seattle and led them to a comeback, and he torched the Patriots at the end, and they gave the game away. And I kind of see the same thing here. He's going to make plays. And they're not going to be able to stop him, in my opinion. They would have to force him into like minimum of 2 interceptions and like really stifle them and not allow him any yards. And he's a 70% completion passer. And he's been in the league for 14 years now, whatever it is. He's been around long enough. I just see bad thing coming. And I have Raiders 23, Patriots 17. I hope I'm wrong. So, that's how I feel. I just have a bad feeling about the first couple of weeks. There's going to be a little bit of a struggle and a learning curve for them. Miami's a tough place to play. They never win down there. So I really hope they get a split. But I have a funny feeling they're going to lose the first two, and then they'll beat the next two and get back on track. I'm getting ahead of myself, but that's just me thinking out loud here. That's my gut feeling based on history of how things have been going. Okay, looking at the time, we're cutting it close as usual. So I'm going to go to the poll questions from last week. Last week we had, bear with me here. Okay, who do you think is going to win this Sunday? Patriots or Raiders? We had 75% Patriots, 25% Raiders. No surprise. Majority of everybody around here is getting all amped up. They want the Patriots to win, so we'll see how that goes. Number 2 question, did the Patriots do the right thing by releasing Jabril Peppers? Yes, he's not a fit anymore. No, he'll come back to haunt them. Yes, he's not a fit anymore, 75%. No, he'll come back to haunt them, 25%. So most people agree he's not a fit anymore. Again, for all the stuff I talked about earlier, I don't need to rehash it. But, they've moved on, and so are we. We'll move on to the weekly predictions. Last week's predictions, I had the Red Sox losing 2 of 3 to Pittsburgh and winning 2 of 3 against Cleveland. Ding, ding, ding. Frank, I finally got another one. Very rare, but, that was my gut told me last week. Number 2, I had Roman Anthony hitting at least one leadoff home run last week. Wrong. Turns out he did not hit a leadoff home run, and he got hurt, so he won't be getting any more home runs. He's done. Number 3, I had Walker Buehler going on the IR with a phantom injury for Cooper Criswell. Wrong. They actually cut him. They released him, and so he's gone. Number 4, bear with me while I butcher this guy's name. The password, Yostinson Garcia. I said he was going to get sent back to Worcester for Nathaniel Lowe, who was due to return for paternity leave. I'm going to say half wrong. He was returned to Worcester, which I got right, but it was the wrong guy. It was Nick Sogard got called up in his place. So I'm going to give myself half credit. And if nobody likes it, well, then too bad. Nothing you can do about that. Moving on to this week's predictions, I'm going to say that Trevion Henderson will get a touchdown this week. I don't know if it'll be as a running back or on special teams, but he's getting a touchdown. I think he's going to be good for 8 to 10 touchdowns minimum this year. He's going to be relied upon, I think, and he's going to come through. So I say he gets a touchdown. I say Jacoby Myers gets a touchdown for the Raiders. This will be another one of those, why can't we get guys like this? Typical, former New England, Boston athletes. They leave, they come back, they do good against us. I wouldn't be surprised if he had like 8 catches for like 70 or 80 yards on a touchdown, something like that. He's a third down machine. So that's kind of what I see from him. I have the Red Sox splitting their upcoming road trip. I think they're going to lose 2 out of 3 to Arizona. I think they're going to win 2 out of 3 against the Athletics. That's what I see. Just because they're the Red Sox, and now it's getting to be crunch time. And I don't have any more, so I'm going to stop there, unfortunately. And so that's it. That's it for the show, everybody. Thank you all for tuning in. Thanks for voting in the polls. Thanks for the support. Thanks for the commentary. Please be sure to check us out on YouTube. Like, share, and subscribe. Tell a friend to tell a friend. And we'll see you guys all next week.